Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1116, 1116, Tuesday, April the 28th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, let's get started with the news of the day. A lot to cover today. So it looks like Attorney General Barr has released a 2-page memo ordering U.S. attorneys to be on the lookout for states and localities that could be violating the constitutional rights and civil liberties of individual citizens amid the coronavirus pandemic. Yes, that's right. He's targeting those liberal governors and mayors who are taking advantage of the situation, and I think he's seen just about enough. I have too, and many of you feel the same way. When you look at what's going on with the Michigan Governor Whitmer, and also what's going on in Virginia, what's going on in New Mexico. You look at some of these governors across the country, some of these big city mayors. Clearly, they believe that the Constitution has been canceled. Attorney General Barr is reminding them that it has not been canceled, and coronavirus or any virus does not cancel the Constitution. So he's putting them on notice, and he's letting all U.S. attorneys know that when you see it, you need to call it out. You need to put a stop to it. Fortunately, we haven't had much of that going on here in Ohio, but we have neighboring states that are experiencing some serious tyranny. So, was happy to see, now he's been talking about this for about 2 weeks, and I think that what he was hoping was that some of the statements that he's made would have, reached some of these liberal mayors and governors, and they would have gotten his drift, if you know what I mean. But apparently they did not. So he came out and did a formal letter, a memo, addressing this to all U.S. attorneys across the country to be on the lookout for these anti-constitutional big city mayors and liberal governors who apparently are taking full advantage of the coronavirus to limit the constitutional rights and civil liberties of Americans across the country. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, and yes, it was needed. It was probably needed a month ago, but I'm glad he finally came out and put this memo out, and hopefully these U.S. attorneys across the country are paying attention, and they'll put a stop to what we see going on. I don't know about you, but I'm fed up with it. I've had enough. The models were wrong. The numbers are not what they said they would be. We're destroying the economy, and it appears to me that there's a lot more politics going on than meets the eye. Politics. How many days did we shut down the country over the bird flu? A lot more deaths. My memory serves me correctly, the number would be 0. Following up on that point, we have this disgusting, despicable, miserable left-wing reporter from the New York Magazine asking Trump last night in his press conference. She said, should we vote for a man who lost over 50,000 American lives, should he be reelected? Should the man who lost over 50,000 Americans be reelected? That is an absolutely sick question. As I said, back during the bird flu, I bet you never heard Obama ask that question. Maybe she should go over to China and ask President Xi if he should be reelected after costing not just 50,000 Americans deaths, but hundreds of thousands, millions across the world because of that little stunt that they've been playing there in China. And we still haven't gotten to the bottom of it. Now, if she was in China and she asked this question to President Xi, she would be disappeared overnight. You would never hear from her again. But of course, he doesn't have to worry about being elected because he's the dictator for life. That's disturbing. I would have not, and Trump handled the question beautifully. He handled the question beautifully. I think the question was meant to rile him up and get him really angry like I am right now. But he didn't. He stayed cool and calm, and he just, they originally predicted 2.2 million lives will be lost. So actually, the fact that we've only lost 50,000 and every one is a tragedy. We don't want to lose any American lives, but we could have lost a lot more if not for the actions taken by, Mike Pence and the people around me and everyone here. So he maintained his calm and cool, but man, oh man, what a disturbing, disgusting, despicable question to ask. Trying to suggest that Trump's responsible for the death of 50,000 people, when in fact it was China. And the president's not responsible at all. The virus is responsible. What a disturbed individual she is. How is she even allowed to I would never allow her in the press room again. Trump should just end these press conferences altogether. I mean, as far as no more media reporters. Come out and give a press conference, issue a statement. No press. In the press. Stop it. Stop giving them the opportunity to play these games. These should be a press-free event. I mean, there's no need to have them there. There's no need for them to be there. All he needs to do is come out every day and make a statement and keep us updated on what's going on. We don't need the idiot press sitting there asking this type of garbage question. I wish someone would do that, or if they are going to allow questions, screen them. You can bet Obama wouldn't let that happen. No way. Those questions would be pre-written and passed out to people as they walked into the room, and they would read the question on the card they were given. That's how it would be done if Obama were president right now. That's disturbing. Despicable. Well, we have Maria Bartiromo yesterday morning reporting that her sources are telling her that Michael Flynn will be exonerated. And I assume... I think he's pretty much already been exonerated based on the information that's come out in the past 2 weeks or so. But I think she means that the charges against him will be dismissed. The case will be dropped. That's what she's saying her sources are telling her. But there are 3 court hearings scheduled. One is for next week with Judge Sullivan. And that's to deal with the issue of Sidney Powell asking for the case to be dismissed. Then there's another court hearing a couple weeks after that where the DOJ gets to respond. And then there's another court hearing scheduled after that where the judge gets to make a decision based on what he's heard from the 2 previous court appearances. So there are currently 3 more court hearings scheduled in Sullivan's court on this issue. The earliest one being next week, and they go until the beginning of June. But Maria Bartiromo is reporting that Flynn will be exonerated. I'm not exactly sure what she means by that. Exonerated and the case being dismissed are 2 different things. Judge Sullivan hasn't issued any ruling. Now, I don't know if she's suggesting that he is going to come out and issue a ruling this week, or who is going to do the exoneration. Will it be the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General? I mean, who exactly is going to do this dismissal of the case? Exoneration is... exonerated, but exonerated is not really quite meaning the end of the legal case. Exonerated means just that he's proven that he didn't do anything wrong. But being proven that he didn't do anything wrong is not the same as a judge issuing a ruling. And last time I checked, these court dates by Judge Sullivan, the first one being next week, have not been canceled or suspended. I'm not aware of that. So I'm not sure what she means. I hope she's right. Let's see when we get to the end of the week what happens here. But as far as I know, Judge Sullivan has still got those 3 dates on his calendar. And but as far as Flynn being exonerated, well, I concluded he should have been exonerated over a year ago. But with this most recent statement, this letter that was sent to Sidney Powell by Timothy Shea, Deputy Assistant Attorney General, I mean, I think that his letter to her was a statement saying essentially Flynn's going to be exonerated. So I think that's what that was. But so I'm not really sure. The wording here is tricky. Not exactly sure what she's pointing to. But that's what's being reported. And people are taking that as she's saying that the case against Flynn is going to be dismissed. But it's the words. I'm just hung up on the words. They mean things. And exonerated does not mean dismissed. But we'll keep following that. And I'm sure. I'm not questioning that. I can't imagine that the case against Flynn is not going to be dismissed. Not only that, I would expect that after that, the very next thing is that the court is going to probably make criminal referrals against the Mueller prosecutors and the FBI for their misconduct and crimes, essentially. I would expect that. Now we have more bad news for Quid Pro Quo Joe. It looks like there are now 2 new witnesses, including one is the neighbor of the alleged victim, who's now coming out and coming forward. So that's 2 new witnesses on top of the recent video that are coming out to confirm what Tara Reade has stated. So, I mean, that's bad news. I mean, I don't know how much longer that the Democrats and left-wing media, and this is just a day after, this comes almost really the same day that Madam Botox endorses Quid Pro Quo Joe. We get these 2 new witnesses. So now you have the 2 witnesses and the Larry King interview on top of she filed an official police complaint report is being investigated. I don't know how much longer the Democrats and the left-wing media can try to run from this story. And you have the Bernie Bros and other so-called leftists now coming out and saying, no, we have to hold Biden accountable or whatever. So there's clearly, this is a problem. It's not going to go away. That's the thing here. The idea that the media thinks that because they ignore it, that everyone else is going to ignore it. No, not everyone is going to ignore it, and I can assure you the Trump campaign is not going to ignore it. Fox News won't ignore it. Many reporters even are not going to say on the so-called right are not going to ignore it. Many YouTubers like myself are not going to ignore it. And of course, the Bernie Bros are not going to ignore it. In fact, it was one of Hillary's henchmen who came out with that editorial last week, at the end of last week. This Peter Dow, or whatever his name is. He's a Hillary sycophant, and he's the one that came out with the article. And of course, then we had Ocasio-Cortez saying that no, we have to hold Biden accountable as well. So this is not going away. I mean, I don't know why they think they can just bury this. It is not going away. It's only going to get worse. And I expect that there'll be more people will come forward if he continues to stonewall it. Because there are other people, I'm sure, that have this knowledge. And once they feel it's safe to come out and second the motion, they will. That's what brought these 2 witnesses out. And there's probably more. And it was just a bad couple of days for Biden. Then he does this interview where it's surreal. You're watching this interview, and Biden is just he's in the shot, standing next to his wife, but he doesn't say anything. He didn't say anything. Jill Biden gives the pitch. It was cringy. It was really cringy. And Biden looks like he's been out in the sun too long. I mean, his face is like burnt red, and it's just his face looks red. He's staring into the camera like a deer in the headlights, and his wife is making the pitch for him. I mean, it's crazy. Never seen anything quite like this. On top of that, the very next day, yesterday, we get a video that surfaces of Joe Biden from 2006, where he is literally calling for 700 miles, bragging about the fact that he signed on to the plan for a 700-mile border fence with Mexico. Then he goes on to say that in addition to that, we need to punish businesses for hiring illegals. And the final cherry on top is when he starts talking about the main reason is not just the people coming across the border illegally, but it's the amount of drugs. And he goes to name all these drugs that come across the Mexican border. Now, he could speak somewhat coherently back then, and he was speaking in a room full of people. I'm sure you've probably seen the video, but that's not good. That's not going to go over very well with the progressives. Nope. Or now that the Democratic Party in general, I mean, this is the establishment of the Democratic Party is now on board with this line of thinking. So back in 2006, the Democrats, to a man and woman, were all ready to sign up for a 700-mile border wall, including Biden. He was one of the ones pushing it. That's what he's bragging about right here. The very thing they're trying to tar and feather Trump for. We now have the Democratic nominee, so-called, taking the exact same positions that, based on the actions Trump has taken. Trump is building the wall, and more than 700 miles, and he is focusing a lot on one of the reasons being the drugs that come across the border. So there you go, quid pro quo Joe, once again finding himself in agreement with Trump from 14 years ago. 14 years ago, he agreed with Trump. That's not going to wear very well, will it? Nope. A lot of things with Joe Biden are not aging well, including Biden himself. He's definitely not aging well. At least he and Kim Jong-un have one thing in common. It appears that they're both brain dead. Well, we now have some responses from Sergei Millian. Two things going on here. First, this is something we didn't even know about. This is something we just learned about today. Apparently, after the declassified footnotes came out, Fox.com wrote a story. And apparently, after that story was written, where they described these declassified footnotes referring to person one, Fox News, of course, says, okay, and we believe person one to be Sergei Millian. Well, we now find out that Sergei Millian responded to that Fox.com article. So they ran a story on the declassified footnotes and the assertion that Millian is person one in the IG report. And Millian contacted Fox. And he strongly denied any links to illicit activities or intelligence services and said that there was an attempt to frame him that had backfired. Then, shortly afterward, he tweets on the same issue. He tweets out that, and I assume this was on Fox's Twitter feed because it's not on his, tweets out, person one, ? Several things match, but several things are definitely wrong. If indeed they used person one, naming Millian. So here he is tweeting out after he contacts Fox and tells them that he has, was framed and that it had backfired and that he wasn't involved in any illicit activities or intelligence services, involved with any intelligence services. Then he goes over and tweets this out, suggesting that while there may be some things in common with him and person one, there are several things that are definitely not right with the description of him being person one. So he's challenging whether or not he is person one. But as best as we can tell, the IG report is referring to Millian as person one. So what he must mean is not that he's not who's being referred to in the IG report as person one, but rather the things that are being attributed to him as person one are not correct. I believe that's how we should read this. But it gets even more interesting because, as you know, Devin Nunes was on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo, and he had asked, and he had basically told Maria Bartiromo, yeah, we want to interview 3 Russians, and one of them is Millian. But he appears to have gone underground. We don't know where he is. Appears to have disappeared. Well, that was Sunday morning. Yesterday, Monday, Millian responded to Devin Nunes, to his Twitter. And he writes to him, Dear Congressman Devin Nunes, thank you for your very public appeal on Maria Bartiromo. Please follow me on Twitter. Let's start a discussion about our meeting. So I go over and I look at Millian's Twitter. Now, the last post that he put up on his Twitter, because this is not on it, the last post up on his Twitter is from almost exactly 1 year ago. His last post on Twitter was April the 19th of 2019, where he says, and I assume this is right after the Mueller report comes out. He says, now as Russiagate is over and feeling totally exonerated by the recent report, let the inquisitive minds find the truth about Pissgate creators, a lovely couple, GS/CS, who organized the smear campaign against the president, Millian. The team, are they untouchable? That's an interesting tweet from a year ago. Now as Russiagate is over and feeling totally exonerated by the recent report, let the inquisitive minds find the truth about Pissgate creators. A lovely couple, GS/CS, who organized the smear campaign against the president, Millian. The team, or are they untouchable? So clearly, Millian is now responding to Devin Nunes saying, hey, saw you on Maria Bartiromo. Why don't you contact me here on Twitter and let's go ahead and talk about how I can come in and start some have some discussions about our meeting. So Millian's more than happy to come and have some little chit chat with Nunes and his committee. Remember, Uncle Bob the Executioner never interviewed Millian. Never interviewed Millian. Can you believe that? Uncle Bob the Executioner, in the so-called Trump-Russia investigation, Russia interfering in the elections, does not talk to the man that he knows is Steele's primary subsource and the only person that Steele actually communicated with directly as a source. And Mueller doesn't interview him. And remember, he's asked in the hearings about Glenn Simpson. Who? Glenn Simpson? Did he play for the Cubs in '74? I mean, doesn't seem to know who Glenn Simpson is. Did not even interview Millian. I mean, a key person. A key person. And number one, person one has to be Millian. Because the FBI interviewed Steele's subsource 3 times between January and May of 2017. And we know that it was Millian that they interviewed. And then they describe the FBI interviewing person 1 3 times between January and May. So we have to be talking about Millian here. And so I think it's very interesting that he responded so quickly to Devin Nunes. And he's apparently doesn't feel he's under any threat because he's saying right there, well, why don't, he's over on Nunes' Twitter feed saying, yeah, well, I got a Twitter account too. Go over and post up on my Twitter account and follow me on Twitter, and we can start discussing about how I can, sit down and answer some questions, or what's the phrase he uses? Let's start a discussion about our meeting. Let's start a discussion about our meeting. So he's obviously perfectly happy with coming to meet. I mean, here he is sitting back here all this time. Mueller doesn't want to talk to him. Doesn't look like the House Intelligence Committee was ever able to talk to him. Doesn't look like the Senate Intelligence Committee ever was out to talk to him. Doesn't look like the Senate Judiciary Committee ever talked to him. Doesn't look like the House Oversight Committee was able to talk to him. Appears like nobody had any interest in Millian until now. He should be absolutely one of the most interesting people that you would want to interview, especially since the Mueller report came out And especially, even on top of that, since the IG report came out. And then we find out that he was interviewed 3 times by the FBI, and he debunked everything that Steele said about their, relationship. So, of course, he's a major person of interest that you want to talk to. So, I have to hope that Devin Nunes, I assume, has been told this by now. And I have to assume by now that Nunes has gone over to his Twitter and probably is following him now. And maybe they're having some discussions. Because Millian seems like he's perfectly okay with getting together with Nunes and answering some questions. And again, he's kind of a con man. But I do believe him for the most part when he says that he was used, or as a patsy, was framed, whatever. I do believe to a large extent that's true, but I also believe that he was probably a little more cooperative than what he was saying, and I probably expect that he was paid. That's the thing. I expect that he was paid, and that's where the issue will come in. But, that seemed to have worked out pretty well for Nunes. If I were Nunes, I'd go on Maria Bartiromo next Sunday and put out a shout-out to Mifsud. So, yeah, this is Devin Nunes, Professor Misfit. Hey, do you have a Twitter account? Because we'd sure like to talk to you, Mr. Misfit, and find out who was paying you. Probably the same person that was paying Downer. Probably the same person that was paying Millian and everyone else. And who was bankrolling all this? I forget. Let me remember. Who was bankrolling all of it? The rotten Reverend Clinton. The rotten Reverend Clinton. Probably the most, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but the most devastating, maybe, conclusion that Durham is going to eventually reach is that the rotten Reverend Clinton was the mastermind of this plot. She planned, organized, directed, and controlled the whole thing, and paid for it. I think that that's what he's going to find when he gets to the bottom of the pile, and he untangles all this web of deceit, and he looks at all these people and finds out who they were all working for, and who they were working for, and who they were working for. And when he finds that a lot of things lead back, including the dossier itself, the way the stuff was pipelined through the State Department, the FBI, the CIA, and the whole 9 yards, I think you're going to find that the rotten Reverend Clinton, Durham is going to find that the rotten Reverend Clinton was the mastermind of this plot. She was behind the scenes like a director, directing everything that was happening, putting setting all the things into motion. Now, the Clintons do not go out and do their own dirty work. They use proxies to do their dirty work for them. But everyone essentially was acting in the interest of the rotten Reverend Clinton, regardless of whether it was the cover story for the so-called hacking of the DNC, whether it was the Hillary Clinton email investigation, whether it was the dossier itself to be the October surprise that was supposed to doom Trump, or whether it was after the election when all these things were set in motion to try to take him out. And I wouldn't doubt but what she's behind or somehow involved in this effort now to get Biden pushed out of the way. The rotten Reverend Clinton never stops thinking, never stops her devious plots. She's always got multiple devious plots moving, going all the time. That's what she does. That's what Hillary Clinton does. That's all she does. Is do these sorts of things. It's what she does. I mean, it's Hillary Clinton. So, yes, I do think it's very interesting that Millian would respond publicly like that. He obviously doesn't have any fear. Papagalopoulos, of course, continues to say that Durham knows who told or asked Downer to meet with him. And I'm pretty sure we're going to find out that whoever was behind asking Downer to meet with Pops was the same person that was behind having Misfit meet with Pops, is the same person who is behind a lot of these things. And when you dig down into it, just like the dossier, we're going to find that a lot of these so-called sources were either coming directly from the FBI or CIA people dropping this stuff on so-called Russians, or from Hillary sycophants like Blumenthal and Shearer. This was a very much an inside home-cooked deal. It's not this big Russian conspiracy. It's a Hillary Clinton working with Confusion GPS campaign, smear campaign. That's what it was. And the FBI used it as a vehicle to accomplish what they were trying to do. And they were doing it on behalf of, well, themselves in a large degree, but the rotten Reverend Clinton. For many of these people, like Brennan, who was hoping to have a position in the Clinton administration, and all these FBI agents, they even talk about it in their emails. You know, how, you don't want to be the one who, puts Hillary at risk. You don't want her, once she becomes president, to come in and find out that you weren't on the team. That kind of talk was going on. So, clearly, there is involvement by the rotten Reverend Clinton, both directly and indirectly. Both using her lawyer, Mr. Sussman, using her henchmen, Shearer and Blumenthal, and also Jonathan Weiner, kind of a Hillary henchman and a middleman. But you can trace almost every one of these people back to the rotten Reverend Clinton or one of her sycophants, one of her intermediaries, if you want to call them that. That's where I think Durham is going to one day find himself, looking at all this and finding out, whoa, wait a minute. What do all these people have in common? What do all these things have in common? Well, they're all for the benefit of the rotten Reverend Clinton. Everyone here knows her. Everyone here had communications. At some point, you're going to want to subpoena the communications of the rotten Reverend Clinton during that period, from, I'd say, probably November 2015 up through the current day. And I think you'll find out a lot more. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.